What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where you already know we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. Make sure you leave a comment. I promise you're going to learn something today. Also, a bunch of people have been hitting me up about that audio book. You can get it directly from me. It's not on Amazon. It's not on Audible. None of that stuff. Hit us up at freedomfighterspc@gmail.com. Also, if you want the softcover book, you can get it from us, autographed copy with a personal message. Hit us up at that same email. So I know you've seen the thumbnail and you're like, damn, two of them dudes, what the hell was going on? I can tell you from personal experience because I spent some time there at USP Pollock. One of the most dangerous prisons in the country, hands down. No question about it. And you know, about a month and a half ago, the DC dudes got into it with the Muslims, right? And you see a lot of DC dudes that are Muslim. So sometimes it's like, wow, what side are they going to pick, right? And I've seen people in that situation. There was a kid named Bush Boogie. Any DC dudes watching, you probably know who he is. He was originally from Brooklyn, but went to DC, ended up with a whole bunch of time out of there. And there were times when he was like, you know, hey, I got to choose when I'm going to choose. And one of the kids that ends up getting killed, man, I spent some time with him. I sent a picture of him over to my boy Dog that I had interviewed. I said, yo, remember this dude? He's like, yeah, man, it's Mario. What's up with him, man? Did he get out? I'm like, yeah, he got out, man, but he got out the wrong way. His blood was left on the razor wire. So anyway, DC gets into it with the Muslims. They start beefing. And, you know, I got some sources over there. Some of the staff hit me up. Some of the prisoners hit me up. And they beef. A bunch of people end up in the hospital. Nobody dies. The compound goes on lockdown. They're locked down. They come off. I think 3-4 weeks later, they come off a lockdown. Might have been a little longer than that. They come off the lockdown. And when you come off lockdown in federal prison, everybody's running for that phone. You want a phone. You want a shower. And then if you got time, you might hit your family up on that core links. But if you don't, you're going to grab something to eat, maybe a soda or something from the store, man. And then you get locked back in, right? Sometimes they lock you back down and let you out for a couple of hours until things start to calm down. They start watching people. Just kind of how it works in federal prison. But anyway, dudes come out. There's always beef, man. Always beef over a telephone. The lines are long. People are trying to get a hold of their people, trying to call their mother, trying to call their kids. And from what I heard, from a reliable source, a couple of them, Mario gets into it with a Crip kid from, I believe, the Midwest. And I also heard that this kid just gave back a bunch of his time. He was waiting to go back to court, I believe. They get into it over the phone. And, you know, Mario was a really good dude, man. And the DC dudes will tell you, man, we ain't got no shot caller. But wherever you go, there's always like elders in the DC car, dudes that you can talk to, dudes that you can deal with. You know, when there's a real issue, those are the dudes that are going to speak up. And, you know, and a lot of the young homies get in line when people like Miyamai or Love or Mario are like, yo, this is what it is. And, you know, we had an issue before. And, you know, Mario was one of the people that kind of like took care of it, made sure it didn't go too far. We had a little beef where one of the DC dudes snatched the stamps from my boy Dog. We had a poker table over there. He took off with him. You know, they eventually got some of that money back and they sent the kid up top because they knew he was wrong. You know, a lot of people talk shit about DC dudes, but there are a lot of good men from DC. And those dudes, like the people I just mentioned, Mario and Love and Miyamai, all them cats, you know, they were the type of dudes that respected men. Men respect men. So anyway, they get in this beef over the telephone, and Mario puts his hands on the kid, man. Puts his hands on the Crip kid, and I heard he smashed him, beat him up a little bit. And Mario was known for that, you know. Any DC dudes watching that know Mario, anybody that's been in prison with him, you know, he put that knockout on you at times. Put your lights out. He was a big dude, man. And he didn't play no games. So he ends up beating up the kid. The kid comes back, gets a knife, gets the up on him, stabs Mario, and Mario dies. He lost his life. Blood on the razor wire right there. Gone. Forever gone. And Mario was in prison. And I want this to be a teachable moment, right? Mario was in prison for something that I always say, man, if it ain't worth killing you over, it ain't worth arguing over, right? And, you know, I can read a little bit of this for you. At the January 4th, 1993 hearing on this motion, Detective Jerome Siddick testified. On November 15th, 1991, he had been called to investigate a homicide at 1319 Park Road. He arrived on the scene at about 6:30 or 6:35 p.m. and remained there for approximately 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. According to Detective Siddick, witnesses at the scene said that at about 6:15 p.m., a man had accused people on the block of stealing his bicycle and had threatened to shoot up all of Park Road until he got the bicycle back. The man brandished what witnesses believed to be a 9mm handgun and then began to fire randomly into passing vehicles on Park Road. Next, he walked over to Renee Best, who was seated on the front step of 1319 Park Road, and fired 2 rounds at Best, striking and killing him. This was an unusual shooting, Sittig said, because Best offered no resistance. Best was a neighborhood alcoholic who bothered absolutely nobody and could not flee the scene that day because he was intoxicated and may have been passed out from his intoxicated level. After the shooting, the shooter continued to make threats as he left the scene, heading south on 13th Street. Think about that, man. Over a bicycle. Bicycle gets stolen. When we're young, we make young decisions, right? We make erratic decisions. So over a bicycle, man. This man ended up going to prison. I think he spent from 1991 to 2022 where he dies. Man, this man spent, 30 years in prison? 30 years in prison because someone stole his bike. And he's just like, yo, I'm about to take it out on, I'm not playing no games. And you know, when you talk about DC dudes, young DC dudes being wild, I guess Mario was a wild dude. But let's talk a little bit more about him. Let's talk about Pollock. I have been taught life lessons by men doing life sentences. I've been a victim, and I've been an assailant. Back in the mid-2000s, USP Pollock was like being in Vietnam. There were more than a dozen murders in 18 months. And they averaged dozens of stabbings a month. Everything happens here. Once upon a time, 2 convicts attacking a third in the middle of the softball field. One had a lock on a belt. The other was brandishing the weapon of choice of all prisoners, a bone crusher. When the SEALs ran to break it up, the attackers shifted their attention from their mark to his saviors. This happens often behind these walls of gloom. On another occasion, the prisoner had wanted to do a food strike. The prisoners came together and said, you know what? We're going against the administration. They were eventually locked down. And once they were locked down, the prisoners ordered everybody not to take their brown paper bags that had our lunch in them. One of the white prisoners had no food in his cell, so he took his bag when it was thrust into his food slot. He accepted it gladly. He ate his bologna and cheese sandwiches, and then his apple. Little did he know it would be the last one he would ever eat. Once the doors were unlocked, he was beat by 2 other prisoners for violating both convict code and the order. With only a few months left on his sentence, his blood would be left here on the razor wire. USP Pollock is a place where many prisoners do not want to go. Many, when they hear that this place will be their destination, shaking their prison-issued Jackie Chans. Once inside R&D, some choose to check in. Others choose to enter the halls of desperation. I once seen a man lay on the floor in the holding cell and refuse to come out when the cops called his name. Eventually, they would drag him from the cell by his hands and feet as he screamed and yelled like a caught zebra on the African plains in distress. On that same day, I would watch 4 or 5 young Texas syndicate gang members beat an old man when they discovered he was a paisa. Just seconds before that beating began, another paisa would walk out of the cell into the hands of the police, letting them know that he was not safe here. The old man was left to fend for himself. The young paisa recognized that he was in the waters with sharks. Even escapes happen here. On April 5th, 2006, Richard Lee McNary escaped from USP Pollock. He was working in Unicor, where he repaired old, torn mailbags. He held this position for several months, during which time he plotted his escape. He would escape by constructing an escape pod, which included a breathing tube and burying it under a pile of outgoing mailbags. At approximately 9:45 a.m., prison staff placed the mailbags on a pallet, transported it to a nearby warehouse outside the prison's perimeter fence, and went for lunch. While they were enjoying their lunch, McNary would then cut himself out of the pod and escape at 11 o'clock a.m. He had already knew that count time was at 4 and that no one would notice that he was gone until then, giving him plenty of time to run. Run, Forrest, run. After a year-long manhunt, he would be captured in New Brunswick, Canada. He had been highlighted on America's Most Wanted on numerous occasions. Since McNair had previously escaped from a county jail and a state prison in North Dakota, once he was caught, they classified him as a high escape risk and transferred him to the U.S. Penitentiary, Florence, ADX. The federal supermax prison in Colorado, which we all know can become a mental torture chamber for those prison officials determined need the tightest controls. On November 2007, William Anthony Bullock was stabbed to death with a shank during an altercation with another prisoner, identified as Sean Wayne Williams. Williams had crafted the shank from a part of a cell locker. Williams was serving a 96-month sentence for being a felon in possession of a firearm, was convicted of voluntary manslaughter in 2009, and sentenced to an additional 15 years in prison for the prison killing. Williams is currently incarcerated at USP Big Sandy. He's scheduled to walk out on January 21st, 2023. Prisoner Stephen Prater was serving a 51-month sentence for being a felon in possession of a firearm. He too was fatally injured at USP Pollock during a fight on June 24th, 2010. On January 18, 2010, another prisoner, Carlton Coltron, was stabbed to death by another prisoner. Coltron's mother said that her son, who was serving a sentence for bank robbery, told her several days before that there were running disputes between gangs of inmates from Louisiana and the Washington, D.C. area. The murders of Prater and Coltron remain under investigation for some time, but their killers too were captured and taken to court. There have been many killings here, including more from D.C. One involved Eddie Branch, who was incarcerated at USP Pollock. A D.C. inmate attacked a white inmate, and the white inmate ended up dying. Branch is attacked by the D.C. inmate upon entering the unit, but is able to get to his cell in the second cell to get 2 weapons. Branch and the D.C. inmate square off in the middle of the unit, and we put this video out so you can see it. Branch backs the D.C. guy into a shower, and he gets the upper hand. Branch then stabs the D.C. inmate in the neck and multiple other places in the torso, and the D.C. inmate falls to the ground just outside the shower. In the surveillance video, you can see him lying in a pool of his own blood. He too would leave his blood on the razor wire. A black D.C. prisoner stopped the assault by swinging a mop handle at Branch. But it was too late. Oh, far too late. At the time staff arrive and escort Branch out of the unit, the D.C. inmate bleeds out right there on the floor, just outside the shower. Branch would eventually be transferred to the ADX. He was convicted of manslaughter. Once leaving ADX, he would go to USP Terre Haute. When he gets there, the D.C. inmates, they recognize him. Yo, that's that white dude right there. That's the dude that killed the homie. And they tell the other white prisoners, yo, dude's got to go. You got to send him up top, or else. And the white prisoners respond, look, your dude killed one of our dudes. He went after him, and he killed him too. So we're even. Everything's over with. They said, no, it's not over with. Everybody straps up with knives. They're on the yard. The cops recognize it. They lock everybody up. All the D.C. inmates are transferred to USP Marion at the time. And all the other prisoners, all the white prisoners, go to USP Leavenworth. The number 1 and number 2 guys from the white group told the warden when given an ultimatum, they will always choose the or else option to maintain respect. And the killing never stops. Mark Harris, aka Mario, he too left his blood on the razor wire. Staff at the facility found Mark B. Harris, 55, to be unresponsive around 9 a.m. on July 12th. This was Mario. Emergency medical services were requested and Harris was transported to a local hospital for life-threatening injuries. He was pronounced dead by hospital staff. Then again on July 30th, 2022, just before 3 o'clock p.m., they were going at it again. They had been off lockdown for 5 or 6 days at USP Pollock. And then again, it was the DC guys fighting the Crip dudes and some of their homeboys. And on that fateful day, at approximately 3 o'clock p.m., the stabbing started. And that's where another DC prisoner, Lionel Stoddard, was transferred to a local hospital for life-threatening injuries after he too was stabbed. He was pronounced deceased by hospital staff. A second and third inmate were medically assessed and treated at the facility, while a fourth inmate was transported to a local hospital for further medical assessment and treatment. Mr. Stoddard was only 39 years old when he left his blood on the razor wire, sentenced out of D.C. to 732 months for conspiracy to participate in a racketeering influence corrupt organization, conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States, armed bank robbery, aiding and abetting, using a firearm during a crime of violence, unlawful possession of a firearm by a person convicted of a crime, and attempted possession with intent to distribute cocaine. He had been in custody at USP Pollock since February 12, 2021. USP Pollock, a house of horrors, a dangerous place. This man had only been there a little more than a year. 39 years old, his life is forever gone. Blood left on the razor wire. And that's USP Pollock. You know, I know from personal experience, I know what it's like to pull up there. You're on the bus, you're handcuffed, you're shackled, and you know in your mind, like you've heard all the stories about USP Pollock. Dangerous place, people are dying. You heard the stories about the white dude who had killed the DC dude because the DC dude had killed the white dude. And you're thinking in your mind on this bus like, wow, this is it, man. I made it to this place, a house of horrors, a place of danger. You're like, man, my life could end right here. And then you walk in and you can just feel it, man. It's gloomy. It's like the lights are dim. They're dimmer than other prisons. You walk in there and you know, man, look, this is where you're at. You're in USP Pollock. Like I said, you know, when I went there on the bus, there was a kid from the Midwest. I think he was from Chicago. He was laying on the floor. He's like, man, I ain't going out there. They're calling his name. Smith. Whatever his name was. Johnson, Smith, whatever. He's laying there and he's not answering the cops. And the cops are like, damn, man, is this dude even on the bus? They start doing a little count and they're like, hey, they're looking at his bed book, his picture. They're like, oh, come on. He's just laying there like, and they had to drag him out. He was that scared that he wouldn't even stand up. He was that scared. And then the other thing with the Paisas that day, you know, the young dude recognized, man, these dudes are probably TSs. We got a beef. He didn't have a chance to tell the old man, like, yo, we got to get out of here. He was like, man, I'm about to save myself first, right? Self-preservation. And Pollock is definitely a dangerous place. It's popping. And like I said, man, Mario was a good dude. In prison, he was a good dude. I know he made some drastic decisions when he was young. And, let that be an example, too. That this man ended up with a life sentence over, getting pissed off. Someone stole his bicycle. Might have been some little young kids, man. And he's like, yo, I'm in a rage right now. And, that moment of rage could cost you your whole life. And in his situation, I read somewhere where he might have got parole or he was going to get out. Not sure, about the details, so I didn't want to speak on that. But, that moment of rage cost him all those years of his life. And I'm sure there were plenty of times, days, months where he was like, damn, I just want to get out of here, man. He's a real respectful dude. Big dude, got busy, didn't play no games. He was just a good dude, man. But he would handle his business when he had to. And now, it's all over with. Did all that time, and then he dies. He had been through too much for his story to end like that, right? Nobody in their mind would have ever thought that Mario would die at USP Pollock years later. At the hands of some young kid that was a Crip over what, initially was just a beef over a telephone. And you guys see what happened with the other kid, Spider, that got murdered, and the kid, they're like, yo, you're about to cop out to 25 years. So this other kid, Brian, from the Midwest, just gives back all that time. He's waiting to go to court, I believe. They get in a beef over the telephone. He gets lumped up a little bit. He sucks it up, licks his wounds, goes get a knife, comes back like, nah, ain't no one putting their hands on me. And now his life's probably gone too. He's definitely getting some more time. You better believe that. They're not playing no games over there. They used to let you just stab people freely. The BOP, there was no consequences. You go to the hole for 2 weeks, you get out, they take your commissary. Who cares? It didn't matter. Now they're charging people. Now they're taking people to court. Now you're getting more time. Now you got to call your mother and be like, look, I was supposed to come home in 2015, but I just killed dude in Pollock, so now I got another 15 years. Remember the kid we talked about earlier when I was talking? Now he's going home in 2023, and I mean, it's not so bad because we're in 2022, right? But that was from 12 years ago. He should have been home 12 years ago. USP Pollock, DC car, Crip car. You better believe that this thing probably ain't over. And how long are they going to be locked down? They're going to be locked down for months probably. I would say months. And, I got a guy over there that I've been helping, and he's probably in his cell rubbing his hands on his head. He, too, has been in prison for about 30 years. He's called me a few times like, wow, man, these young boys over here, man, it ain't like it used to be, Chad. Get me out of here. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. Make sure you leave a comment and stay tuned. With respect, we're out.